let's just talk very briefly about energy, because I know a lot of the energy generation in Western Australia comes from coal mined around Collie, which is just near Bunbury in the southwest. Now, what's the state of the energy industry in WA now? I mean, McGowan was preoccupied with transitioning, just like Chris Bowen is over here on the East Coast. He was, the West Australian energy system is independent of the rest of the nation, ostensibly, and McGowan was pretty obsessed with driving it towards renewables. How's that working out?
Look, there will be a shutdown of the Collie power stations by the end of the decade. The thing that is shielding Western Australia at the moment from probably the worst excesses of the energy crisis, notwithstanding the drive to net zero, is under previous governments, because of the abundance of natural gas reserves that we have in this state and off the coast of this state. A certain amount by legislation has to be reserved for Western Australia. So if it weren't for that, we'd be in a pretty serious position in terms of energy.
Yeah, he was pretty determined to shift it over to renewables, which is the fashionable thing to do, not the most economically sensible thing. But let's talk about one of the things that made him national headlines recently. He said after a trip to China that he thought that the Australian National Cabinet should be held in China as some sort of gesture of goodwill. Now, there is, I know, some dispute about how accurately he was quoted in saying that, but what was the feeling about that in Western Australia? Was he quoted accurately, and did Western Australians think he was a bit of a dill for saying it?
Look, there definitely was a bit of that feeling around. I mean, he even had to correct his favourite media outlet, the West Australian, even had to issue a correction. And the West Australian stands accused over the last 3 or 4 years of being Pravda-like in its adoration of the Premier. But the problem with McGowan is he can deny that as much as he likes. But look at his record. I mean, since coming into office, and even before, he has been, shall we say, has made no bones about his adulation of China and how important that relationship is. I mean, when Scott Morrison was Prime Minister, he criticised him for criticising China. He criticised Peter Dutton as Defence Minister for when China started doing those exercises in the South China Sea. He said Peter Dutton's attitude was warmongering and it was nutty. But the thing, and he even offered to mediate between China and Australia. And we all know that
was an interesting slip up. Rocco, that was an interesting slip. Mediate between China and Australia, as if Western Australia isn't part of the country. I think that might have been part of McGowan's grand plan. But let's talk about another thing that really made him well known for all the wrong reasons. He put Western Australia on the map around the world for this offensive video. Let's have a listen.
This is an important message to keep Aboriginal people safe.
And this message is probably an important one to keep everybody safe one.
You can die from the corona or get really sick.
You can pass away from this corona, or you can get really sick one.
Really sick one. Rocco, were West Australians embarrassed by that?
Oh, look, I mean, the coverage it received was fawning in most media outlets. But the fact of the matter is, you look at that and you just think, look how patronising that is. And that's just his attitude. That was his attitude to the whole, not just COVID, but generally patronising attitude. I mean, he criticised people who disagree with him on his COVID policies as drop kicks, as he told people to grow a brain. I mean, that kind of patronising attitude wasn't just reserved for Aboriginal people. It was reserved for all of Western Australia. And unfortunately, we only had two or three journalists in this state call it out. But for the rest of it, look, it really was embarrassing.